Not even Aaron Taylor Johnson's abs could have saved this movie. Hello plebeians and welcome back to my channel. Today we are discussing Kraven, Sony's latest entry into the terribly written and horribly marketed Spider-Man Villains universe. Or as I like to call it, we got Marvel at home universe. Sony must have known how terrible this movie was going to be because they put nothing into this marketing budget, okay? And if they did, I must have been living under Patrick's rock because I didn't even know this movie existed. Despite being a casual Marvel fan, I've actually never seen any of the movies in the Spider-Man villain universe. And after this movie, I definitely don't plan to. The only reason why I even went to go see this one was because my friend told me about it, and I really wanted to contribute to Aaron Taylor Johnson's eventual divorcing from my groomer fund, so I decided to go and support. And I went, and honestly, it was bad. But it wasn't that bad.
You need to leave!
Hear me out. The way that people were talking about this movie, I was expecting
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Kind of bad, or like, it's Morbin time. You know, like that level of monstrosity. I didn't get that, unfortunately. I wish it was that entertaining. I really do. There was this one moment with the rhino. But outside of that, it was all pretty tame. It was all pretty lame. And I was really disappointed because I wanted to laugh. I was there to haha. I was there to kiki. I was there to drool over Aaron Taylor Johnson's abs. Admittedly, I did get to do a lot of the third one, but that's beside the point. But despite my expectations, what I got instead was like this one-dimensional, contrived action movie filled with all these characters and Easter eggs that I know nothing about. And at the end, it just made me go, so what? So let's talk about the movie Kraven. The plot. So Kraven follows our protagonist, Sergey, who calls himself Kraven, which is very Star-Lord of him. See, I made those Marvel connections. So we meet him and his younger half-brother, Dmitri. They're both sons of a Russian mob boss who they both despise. Because one, the father himself is just terrible, but the father hates Dmitri because he has a really weak disposition. He was born out of wedlock. He was like a mistake baby, and he looks like Jasper from Twilight. So we meet these brothers after the death of their mother, where their father, Nikolai, who is played by Russell Crowe, of all people, instead of taking them to their mother's funeral, he decides to take them on an African safari. While on the safari, Sergey, or Kraven, however you want to call him, he was attacked by this mysteriously mythical lion, and he actually dies for a second, but he's brought back to life by a girl named Calypso, whose grandmother conveniently gave her this supercharged serum that gives Kraven all these mythical powers. So he now has super strength, crazy agility, the ability to climb walls, see from miles away, basically anything that allows him to be the king of the jungle, he has. So after discovering these abilities, Kraven decides to run away from his terrible father, and he leaves his half-brother Dmitri behind. So fast forward years later, and Sergey is now known as the Hunter. He has like 4 names in this movie. By the way, it's all very confusing. I don't know why they wrote it like that, but whatever. He's known as the Hunter, and he hunts and unalived criminal bosses, basically do things that his father does. Now, why he doesn't hunt his father, the movie doesn't really tell us for real. I'm assuming it could all be summed up to daddy issues, and I guess I would require some therapy sessions. And based on what I saw in this movie, I don't think Sergey has healthcare. So anyway, some criminal boss named the Rhino, because he can turn into a rhinoceros. I promise you I'm not making this up. The Rhino assumes that Sergey is coming after him and his criminal empire. Why? Because the movie tells us. So as a way to draw Kraven out, he decides to kidnap Dmitri, and we basically follow as Kraven and Calypso, who is now a high-powered attorney, team up together to try to find his brother. The good. I guess the acting isn't that bad. I mean, everyone in there, they were serviceable. As mentioned, the plot, as you can imagine based on my description, very contrived, one-dimensional. The dialogue also followed that same pattern, and so, you know, there really wasn't a lot for the actors to work with, but there also wasn't a lot for them to mess up. The only thing I could think of is just a really terrible Marvel like quips. I would say that's something is similar between the Sony universe movies, at least the one that I saw, and the more common, like especially more recent Marvel movies, is like the terrible quips and dialogue that just like really takes you out of the movie. Not fun, but I feel like the actors did the best that they could do. Aaron Taylor Johnson specifically, he was very serviceable as Kraven. He was fine. The character of Kraven definitely is one of those like mysterious, I don't like anyone or want anyone around me kind of characters. But like they make it very obvious that his brother is kind of the only person that he goes out of his way for. But then it also kind of gets confusing, like his characterization, because he just like ups and reveals his identity to Calypso for a really stupid reason, which we'll discuss later. But like it just doesn't really make sense. I feel like his characterization isn't really consistent, but despite that, he does a decent job. The acting, as I said, the acting itself was fine. Aaron was fine. Ariana DeBose, she plays Calypso. She was all right. She was fine. The guy who plays Kraven's half brother, Dimitri, he was cool. He kind of reminds me of now that I think about it, excuse me. He kind of reminds me of that guy from Gladiator 2, one of the emperors. Actually, from the future, I'm here to report that he actually was in Gladiator 2. He was one of the emperors. His name is Fred Hetchinger. So he was cool. Shout out. Speaking of Gladiator, Russell Crowe was pretty good as the evil dad, which is to be expected because he never misses. Well, he almost never misses the bad. Before we even get to the plot, I just want to give a special shout out to Ariana DeBose's wig, because that shit was terrible. I was like, oh, Tyler Perry? Is this a Tyler Perry production? I had no idea. Yeah, but outside of that, the plot was terrible. So Kraven, as I mentioned, is a hunter of criminals. The Rhino just assumes for some reason that, it wasn't made very clear to me when I watched it, maybe I missed something, but the Rhino assumes that for some reason the hunter is after him after a USB mysteriously appears under his door with Kraven's super secret identity. The Rhino decides to kidnap his brother. Now Kraven, though he did run away from his father as a teenager, as we fast forward years later, we learn that despite him running away, him and his brother still maintained a close relationship. So when his father, who refuses to pay the ransom in order to not look weak in front of his adversaries, Kraven decides for some reason not to think too hard about why his father wouldn't do that, and he decides to just run off and find Dimitri himself. So throughout the movie, they have like this whole back and forth cat and mouse, and it eventually culminates into a showdown with the Rhino and another guy, a mercenary named the Foreigner, who honestly was like, to me, one of the coolest characters. He had like this really cool ability where he could like hypnotize people. In my opinion, his character was actually pretty interesting, but I guess in true bad movie fashion, they kill off the most interesting character, and so Calypso actually takes an arrow in him, so rest in peace. So during the final fight scene, Rhino expectantly reveals that it's actually Kraven's dad, Nikolai, who revealed Kraven's identity to the Rhino. And he did that so that Kraven would go after Rhino, since the Rhino was a threat to Kraven's dad's criminal empire. At the end of the movie, Kraven ends up unaliving the Rhino, and then in retaliation for his actions, he goes and ends up killing his dad as well. And Dimitri's brother, who's basically just tired of being the weak brother, he's tired of being seen as lesser, he goes off and gets some surgery and becomes something called the chameleon, so now he can like change his shape and be whoever he wants to be at any point in time. Brother ends up turning evil and takes over his father's criminal empire. So we end the movie with Aaron Taylor Johnson killing the bad guy, saving his brother who ends up being evil, and our last scene is him wearing the lion pelt of the lion who attacked him when he was a teenager, and sitting on a random throne in a room in his dad's old house, shirtless. I just feel like I should mention he was also shirtless. But yeah, I mean, the movie itself was boring. I was really wanting something new. I wanted some pizzazz, you know? Like, why couldn't Calypso be the brother's secret lover who was sent to lure Kraven to his death or something like that? Like, it's even more frustrating when you... And I should have known this from the name. I didn't really think about it, but it's even more frustrating when you Google these characters and then you remember that these are all supposed to be villains. They're supposed to be Spider-Man villains. Like, these people are supposed to technically be evil. And so it's like, yo, I wanted to see some villainous shit. You know what I mean? I wanted to see some villainous things from the main character. I want to see him eventually turn evil. I want to see at least sparks of that in the first movie. Like, he starts off actually thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a good guy. But then as time goes on, the threshold of what he's willing to do to beat the good guy is so high that he ends up also turning into a villain himself. He's willing to kill or hurt enough people to get his prize in his hunt, and he actually ends up being worse than the people that he's hunting, right? Like, that'd be so much more interesting. Like, it would have been way more interesting if like, in an effort to save his brother, he had to like blow up a car of babies or something. You know, it's a little bit more interesting. Also, knowing who Calypso is based on the Wikipedia, one, she's a bad bitch, but also, like, I'm very disappointed. They did at some point in the movie make it seem like there's some mysterious backstory to her, but based on the bad writing in this movie, I don't think that whatever backstory that would have eventually been revealed would have been interesting. And I'm also not over the fact that this man, who says that he is quote unquote the best hunter in the world, went to Calypso because he needed help tracking people down. I'm not saying he doesn't need help at all, like he shouldn't ask for help, but if his whole thing is that like he's the best hunter in the world, but then the only reason why he is even asking Calypso for help is to quote unquote basically hunt people down and where they are, then like, how does that make him the greatest hunter in the world? Like, why couldn't she have been like an IT person because he needed someone to help him with a gadget? Or like, if you wanted to keep her as a lawyer, maybe he had to do research on some kind of artifact or country, and he contacts her for help because she's a lawyer, so she knows how to read. Keep your story consistent. And honestly, I was gonna originally title this like Kraven is bad, but it's not that bad. But the more I'm talking about this, the more I realize this movie does not make sense. And it is way worse than I thought. And I think I actually am going to have to change the title of this video. But yeah, that's Kraven the Hunter. Don't go see it unless you're like me and you just want to see Aaron Taylor Johnson's abs on the big screen. Honestly, I don't even know when I'm going to be able to post this. So I don't even know if it's going to be in theaters by the time I post this. But anyway, it's not worth the ticket price. Don't say I didn't warn you. If you like this video, please give us a like and subscribe. I would love to know y'all's opinions on this movie in the comment below. Y'all seen it? What are your thoughts on Kraven? For the people who like the comics, what are y'all's thoughts on how they translated the characters to the screen? I'd love to know that. Comment below. Have a great day. Imani out.